Hello, everyone. We're looking at the Bill of Rights, part of the United States Constitution. We're looking at this part of it. We're focusing on the Bill of Rights, but it's important to understand that these are amendments to the Constitution. What is the Constitution of the United States? The Constitution of the United States is what lays out the basic powers of the federal government. That is the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary branches, and how power operates, governmental power. That's what the Constitution is. That is what a Constitution is. Something that lays out what the basic foundation of a government is, and what the different powers of the different parts of government are. And that's an important thing. It's what establishes the United States as a nation. The Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to that Constitution. So there are things that were added on. And the first 10, first 10 amendments, these are all amendments to the Constitution, is what is commonly known as the Bill of Rights. Amendments that were adopted immediately to the Constitution. And now if we look, we should know that there are about 20 more amendments that have been tacked onto the Constitution over the centuries. Some of them very, very important. Eliminating slavery, establishing the right to vote for people, for women, things like that. Very, very important civil rights amendments. But these are the first 10, and these are the ones that the people who passed the Constitution thought were important to say right away. I mean, they were clearly meant as explicit statements about the limits of governmental power as they relate to individuals. That is, they thought it was important to lay out what they regarded to be the fundamental rights of individual citizens that could not be infringed. And I think it's important to take a look at what some of these are. They're quite familiar. If you're an American, they're quite familiar, most of them at least. But we don't really look at them philosophically. We don't really read them for content very often. So maybe we should do that. First Amendment, very, very important and very famous, maybe the most important and famous one. Amendment 1, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That first part of it, that first clause, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, can be kind of confusing if you didn't grow up in a country where there was a state church. In places like England, there is something called the Church of England, and other countries, I'm not sure which, also have established churches. That is, the idea that there is a state-supported national religion, national church. That is the church of the country, the official church of the country. It's very, very complex, the history of this in England and other countries, but what the Constitution says right there is there can't be an American church. There can't be a Church of America, a national church that is established, in the sense of being established by law as the official religion of the country. They thought it was quite important right away to say that that can't happen in America. There can't be an established church. There can't be a national religion. There can't be something like a Church of America. Or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, that is, the free exercise of religion. So it is something that says right away there can't be an established church. There can't be a church that is founded on and intertwined with government. That's the separation of church and state that is so famous, such a famous part of the American Constitution. And so it's important to see that there are other countries where there is no separation. That is because there's a national church, which is essentially part of the government, right? The government funded, that is, founded on tax dollars that are collected. I mean, there are a lot of countries in the world like that, where they have essentially no separation, no fundamental separation of church and state, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That is, it clearly is saying the free exercise of religion is a fundamental right in America, at least, so that whatever religion you want to follow, you are free to do that. There is no state religion that you have to worry about. And I think the implication is, although this is very contentious among some people, that you don't have to follow any religion at all. So that's the first part of it. It's really about religion. Second part, which I think is a distinct part, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. So going along with, but distinct from, this free exercise of religion is the freedom of speech. Congress shall make no law establishing religion or the free exercise thereof. That has to be totally free. And Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. That is, the freedom of speech is recognized as a fundamental right, fundamental freedom, which cannot be limited by government. Now, this is a very, very complicated story because, of course, there are such laws, right? That is, there are laws that abridge or that limit what people can say. And there are very, very famous Supreme Court cases, U.S. Supreme Court cases, that talk about this. So, but the idea that there shouldn't be a governmental law that limits what people can say, or of the press. Right? And the press is newspapers at that time. The press is newspapers and books, basically. You can't make a law limiting what people can say in newspapers or books. Now, that's another really interesting, great history of, there's obscenity laws, right? There are laws about, what can be broadcast on television at certain times of day. So these are very, very complicated things in United States history. I think, maybe one of the connections here is between freedom of speech and religion is that, people used to be prosecuted for blasphemy, for saying things that went against religion. And maybe, one of the things they have in mind is that you can't do that in America. But I'm just speculating here. Or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That is, there's three distinct sections here. The first has to do with religion. The second has to do with freedom of speech and freedom of the press. The third has to do with freedom of assembly and petitioning the government for a redress of grievances. That is, Congress cannot make a law that limits people's rights to form groups, just maybe the kind of groups that actually Madison was afraid of, factions. People forming interest groups and to petition the government for a redress of grievances, which is basically petitioning the government, pressuring the government to make changes in laws, in whatever it is about environmental laws, tax laws, laws about anything. That cannot be abridged or limited. And that's really extremely interesting. So we see that it's a very, very rich thing, the First Amendment. It seems to cover three distinct areas: religion, speech, and the right to form basically interest groups. But those three things are obviously related in such a way that they do seem to me to belong together, and they naturally seem to belong together in the First Amendment.